Welcome to the February meeting of the South Central Pennsylvania Genealogical Society. My name is Jonathan Stan. I'm the president, and I just want to be here this afternoon. Is everybody here for the first time? Not going up before. It looks like everybody has seen it here before. So at this time, I'm going to ask Richard Robinstein to come and read the minutes from the January meeting. Thank you, Jonathan. Welcome, everybody. Jonathan opened the last meeting January 8th, program and increased the center. He welcomed all the groups that were in attendance. We had 6 new attendees that day. I read the minutes of the last of November 6th, 2022 program minutes. Margaret Burke gave the treasury report, the balance sheet of November and December. The balance for October 21st, should go 31st, 2022 was $16,836.50. There was a receipt correction and amount that took place with PayPal for a fee of $5.51. Donations of $35 for the fee of $1.05 for the electronic transfer of the code codes. The net was $33.95. December's membership was $35. The Bush Express sale netted $12. So that was $47. For the receipt for November and December for $86.36. Their distribution for November, the second distribution for December was posted for next week. The print, the special publication number 84, cost of $700.39. $709.95. Mailing this publication cost $303. 66. Postal connection, they could produce November summer newsletter for $120.85. For this week for $1,082.67, leaving a balance December 31st, 2022 of $15,703. Total membership was 132, of which 14 have not renewed as of the last year. 37 members have used their new 2-year renewal program. The total announced upcoming events and activities at the York History Center advised that the program, as well as others, are being recorded and available on the York County History Center YouTube site, and more information at www.historycenter.org. Upcoming events for the History Center, January 14th at 10:30. Is Jack Graham of the Keystone Marker Trust, York Civil War Roundtable. It's January 18th at 7 p.m. The webinar with Scott News and Eric Wittenberg, speaking of their new book, Armies of the North Virginia Summit. All that, it had a special date, it's Saturday, January 12th. For 28 at 10:30, and Carl Fiddler with creative event. Family Day was January 28th at 10 a.m. And that was at the agriculture and industrial museum. Jonathan reported that he was following a guide to the known records. The York historical records. No historic records. The York County Archives have police records from the late 1800s and early 1900s. And if you have any ancestors in New York City, in the city of York, we need to read them. We have a couple of examples which were very funny, somewhat funny, but as to what's in maybe when we post them. We have not had a lot of success in getting hold of the records that what City Hall has. Don't be more one. If you have contact with anyone from the city or please let Jonathan know so we can get access to the work. Something Nicole didn't mention was Saturday, February 25th, 2023. We will be conducting the genealogy seminar again. If you know anyone who may have interest in it, please have them registered. Jonathan was approached by the South Central Senior Center to have a genealogy program for them. If you're not a board member, but want to participate, they are open for a possible series program there. If you're comfortable, I just went over the upcoming events for the year. Sunday, February 5th, which is today, is Rodney Barnett, the program is African American Genealogy, tips and resources. Sunday, March 5th, is Jonathan Taylor, will speak at the Pennsylvania Central Board graduate. Sunday, April 2nd, will be Taylor, who is Pennsylvania archives, will speak on prison records in the state government. Sunday, May 7th, for of State Youth Union Church Cemetery. They're celebrating their 250th anniversary. Now will be presented by June Lloyd and June Robertson. The Sunday, June 11th, meeting is still unknown, but if you have any suggestions, please contact the contact on us here at already have. That's all I have.
Thank you. Margaret?
Okay, the Treasurer's report for January 2023 balance at December 31st, 2022 was $15,740.50. Receipts, membership renewal, $95, publication sale, $36, total receipts, $131. Disbursements to the post office for stamps for the treasurer, $60. That was the total of disbursement. The cash balance at January 31st, 2023 is $15,811.50. Membership is 134. We've had 2 renewals. One was a former member and that one of the 2 was for the 2-year membership. Thank you.
Nicole?
Oh, my turn. Thanks, Bob.
Hello, everyone. It's nice to see a good crowd today. Just a couple of quick announcements from the History Center. Our second Saturday program on February 11th will be Dr. Peter Levy. We'll be speaking about his program entitled York's 1969 Revolt. Our Civil War Roundtable program is February 15th. It's a webinar with Jim Hessler and will be about his charge. Jonathan, I'm sure will be speaking more about the upcoming seminar for beginning genealogy that the History Center is doing with the South Central Genealogy Society on February 25th. And our February 27th bookmark program, which is our online book club. It's on Eric Larson's Splendid and the Splendid and the Vile. And Eric Larson will actually be coming to York and speaking for the History Center on April 18th at the House Center. Tickets go on sale February 10th. More information on any of these things, please let me know or visit yorkhistorycenter.org. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. Before I turn the program over to Vicki to talk about our upcoming events, I just wanted to mention a few items. Nicole mentioned our genealogy seminar on February 25th. That is for people who are just starting genealogy. We're going to offer 3 different sessions. How to get started. Beginner's guide to using DNA in your research. And Lynn's put together a very interesting session on there's 8 things, right? 8 things that I wish I would have known when I started my genealogical research. So if you're just getting started in your research, you might want to sign up for that program. Or if you know somebody who said, no, I was going to do my family history, but I didn't know how, this would be a good time to learn and get information, as Nicole said, through the website of York County History Center. How many of you did not have, how many of you had no ancestors who served in the Civil War, besides me? If you had no ancestors who served in the Civil War, you want to come next month, I'm going to talk about draft records. Because the draft records cover many more men than those that served in the Civil War. Tony Richard, I have some very interesting examples to show you the things that I've learned. And you'll learn a lot about my own family next month. So next month I'll be talking about researching Pennsylvania Civil War draft records. A couple of initiatives that we've been involved in. Last week, Richard and I went to see the oldest records of Christ Lutheran Church, and we are working with them to probably scan those records for future preservation. And we'll be learning more about that as the board makes decisions on how we want to move forward with that project. The church is very eager to have us help them with that, and we are very eager to preserve them because they are some of the earliest church records here in York County of recording of some first white families in the area here. So keep that in mind. Richard Robinstein mentioned York City records. My guide to what's available is complete, and Nicole has a copy. I'll send a copy of the County Archives. I was supposed to hopefully see the records this week, although I do now know who has the records here in the city. It's just a matter of setting up appointments to go to verify that what's on microfilm still exists in the original form. Hopefully, I'm going to find some more things and I'm going to update my guide. But if you're doing research in people who are in York City, you want to know what city records, what municipal records are available, just ask Nicole. I'll be glad to provide that as well. After this meeting, the board will be having a meeting, and we're going to be hopefully approving a revision to our bylaws. We want to make our bylaws reflect more of how we actually function. So look for something either in writing or in your email as to changes that we were going to be voting on as far as bylaws. The board will approve first, then we'll present it to the full membership. As far as the South Central York County Senior Center genealogy class goes, I did set up a series of programs for that one, designed a series of programs for them. I haven't heard back if they want to go ahead with that yet or not, but several of our board members have agreed to be speakers as well as the county archives and one of the Nicole's people. So we're hopefully going to work with them to put together a series of sessions to produce a several-week long genealogy class. We'll see where that goes. And one final thing I wanted to mention, I don't know how many of you are members of the National Genealogical Society, but in the most recent magazine of the National Genealogical Society is an article by our own Jerry Smith about how to plot meets and bounds properties. So if you have old deeds and you want to know how to plot out the boundaries, Jerry gives you a step-by-step procedure here. All you need is a ruler and a protractor and a piece of graph paper, which is what I normally do. Although he does mention computer programs that will do it for you. Although I prefer to use a ruler and protractor because then you can budget things and make it work, which sometimes the computer isn't quite as forgiving as your own hands are. So, any other news that people would like to share for the good of the group here? All right, now I'm going to have Richard come tell us about upcoming programs and interview our speaker.
Hello, I'm Richard Conkle. I'm Vice President of South Central. Before I introduce today's speaker, I'll tell you the rest of the speakers for this year, ending in June. So, next month, we have Jonathan Stair, who you just heard, our president, talking about draft records. That'll be Sunday, March 5th in this room. On April the 2nd, we have a young man, Tyler Stump, who works at Pennsylvania State Archives, and he will be giving a presentation on Pennsylvania prison records. Most of the prison records from state penitentiaries are held at Pennsylvania State Archives. I've actually used some of those. I had an ancestor who visited the eastern states several times under various names, and also went by the name John Jones. He was a very hard person to track down. John Jones is not his name. I'm not quite sure what his name was, but that should be a very interesting presentation. In May, we are off-site. We will not be here, and that will be at St. Luke's, now a Lutheran congregation that's on Burkholder Road near New Bridgeville in Chancery Township. June Lloyd, who worked here for many years and is librarian and archivist emeritus, he's presenting it with Gene Robinson, who was a member of that congregation. Both of them are members of that congregation. They gave this presentation in the fall. We're hoping for good weather on May the 7th. So it'll be the first Sunday in May, day after the coronation. So, then we have in June, it will be the second Sunday in June. I have lined up now John Cromer, who is the chief archaeologist for the Camp Security site. And they have made some very interesting findings there recently, where they basically think they have located where Camp Security, the actual location that is where it is. He's out of State College, and we look forward to hearing about that. So our speaker today, Rodney, I've known Rodney for a long time. Margaret Berg and I used to go out on Friday evenings to the Family History Center out on Hollywood Drive, and Cecilia Rush was the person who was there, and Rodney would be there as well. And he was working on Botetourt County, I remember quite a lot. And I think I got to know him through that. And also, he's a very talented organist. He's probably one of the best at playing the Tannenberg organ. He can work those pedals. They're weird pedals. They're real straight. They don't curve, and people who have big feet have problems with it. He can just kind of dance over them and play all that bop and all that sort of thing very well. So Rodney has a very impressive background. He studied nuclear engineering, came to this area to work at Peach Bottom, but was also an organist. He was first at Asbury United Methodist, and then he's been at St. John's Episcopal Church for quite a few years. He's given us some presentations on African American genealogy in the past. We haven't quite decided how long ago it was. I think it was before 2008, so it's been a while. But it was very interesting to hear. Do any of you remember his presentations before? Okay, we have some people say they do. Good. So I'm really looking forward to his presentation today, and I think we'll learn some new things. So without further ado, Rodney Barnett.
Good afternoon, everyone. First, I'd like to tell you a little bit about myself. I'm not sure how I really got into this genealogy stuff. It's just one of those things that just happened. I had zero interest in it as a child, as a teenager, and it's just one of those things that came up. I think what happened to me was I one day realized I knew nothing about my family. I knew my grandparents, I knew all four of them, I knew my cousins, but besides that, I didn't know anything. And the curiosity just finally got me. So I started to do research, and that's how I started, and I just never gave up. I'm one of those people who just love a challenge and just a better challenge. So I love it to death, and my family loves it, and they appreciate hearing about because nobody else wants to do that research. Well, I shouldn't say that. There are plenty of people who do it, just that most don't, but they are very interested in at least hearing the results of the things that I've come up with over the years. As Richard, mentioned, I live in Red Vine, and I've lived in Red Vine, that's the only place I've lived in the county, since I've been here. I used to work at Peak Valley, I'm a nuclear engineering degree, I worked in Philadelphia, and I wanted to work at the plant, so I moved here. Got a master's degree in computer science, I worked for York International. Then I was laid off from there around the time of the merger with Johnson Control. So I said, I'm gonna go back and get a music degree. So I went down to, the old college down in Baltimore. But that's where I got my master's, and then I went to LBC to get my music degree. So I'm a full-time organist at St. John's, organist, bar director, bell director, kid director, that type of thing. So, seems like I lived a couple lives, and in between all the lives, I'm trying to stuff some genealogy in there too. So, this presentation on African American genealogy, I've done it a few times. It's just a very interesting topic that a lot of times it's just overlooked. You think, well, I don't really need to know. Why do I need to know anything about African American genealogy? But it kind of affects us all. So, it's just one of those things. And the more you know, the more you can help somebody else who's trying to start out, because sometimes you just don't know how to start. Let's see if I can remember how to start. If she down.
No. It was-
I do remember. I'll keep talking, that's no problem. Well, I can start with my family. I was the middle child for many years, growing up, and then, when I was in college, a senior in college, my parents found out they could still have children. So, we are very spread out in age from, I would say from about 35 to 62, I think. So we're, everything. So we're pretty spread out, and, so we weren't exactly close, we were 3 or 4 years apart, so we were always in the different schools at, different times, so. That's how I grew up. I was born in Washington, D.C., but my parents moved out when I was a baby, so I was raised in Pittsburgh County, Maryland, and, in fact, I always thought I was from Maryland, and my mom thought, and told me much later, oh, you were born in D.C. Thanks, Mom and Dad. So I never knew that. Again, that's why I do research it. I just didn't know too much. And the topic about African American genealogy, of course, when you start, it's about the same as any other genealogy, because it branches off. So it really branches off a lot, and it's very difficult, very quickly. So the beginning part is no different than anybody research. And so I just have a few topics that I had up there that I would like to try to go over this afternoon. And I would like to talk a little bit about DNA testing and a little bit about the Collins-Leeds method. Has anyone used the Collins-Leeds method? Oh, I love it. It's one of my favorite things. I think if you are a very analytical person, that Collins-Leeds method, it will change the genealogy. I probably should have brought more examples. I love it. I'll run those programs. Sometimes those programs the computer will generate the results for you. You put in the parameters. And sometimes it may run for 3, 4, and 5 hours. It generates the stuff and spits it out. And you look at those charts and it's just a little amazing. I think the Collins-Leeds method hasn't been out that long. But it is a fantastic method. It's like a third party type of application. So. Why is African American history so important? Really is important because it's not just African American genealogy, it's African American history, and it's part of their history. And as the tide is changing, a lot of that is trying to be suppressed, and it just doesn't make any sense as much in history as anybody else's history. And so it's an important topic, and it really does affect. It affects us all and how we relate to each other. So that is one of the reasons that That is important. It's also important just because it gives people time to figure out their heritage. Because sometimes we just make assumptions about the heritage. And it's one thing I did research and realize it's very different than heritage. What makes African American genealogy so difficult is slavery. That's the big thing in this in the middle. It's difficult. Once you get there, everything changes. We just hit it slowly. I mean, I went back very quickly and found my family, and then all of a sudden, bam, no records at all. And it's just all of a sudden you had nothing. And so I thought, well, this genealogy is pretty easy. And I hit slavery, and I was like, oh, well, right here. So that's the hardest part. And then after slavery, I think what happened is many African Americans were doing much better than people realize. And you look back at the records of many African Americans on quite a bit of land, they had their own businesses, they were doing well. And so then the law started to change. Like we can't have that. These people were slaves. We just part of the reason that was slaves was they're supposed to be below us, and they did quite well. And so all the law started to change. And so the law for land. And then things change, so that also makes it a little bit challenging to find records. The lack of knowledge is for a couple reasons. Some of our ancestors didn't want to talk about slavery. Once that was over, they refused to talk about it. And so we don't know. And the history, I mean, I know what I learned in school about slavery, and that's a joke. From our history book, right? There's maybe about meaning and really, I know they have a lot of, they go back and forth whether they should teach it. From what I learned, they might as well know that, because there wasn't much. But if you're going to really teach it, then I can understand. And in this information, there's just a lot of stuff that people just didn't understand because they just don't know. So it's just a lot of stuff. So that's what makes African American genealogy so much more difficult. Starting with this. And I love that computer generated photo of myself. Once in a while you play around with those and they come out all right. My parents are they both are still alive in their 80s. My father was born in Montauk County, Virginia. He was the second 13th baby. And mom she was the first of her family to be born in West Virginia, and they were from Alabama. So her ancestors were from Alabama, but they moved to my granddaddy was a coal mine. So they did that circuit and they ended up eventually in Chicago. And mom is one of maybe 9. I was 8 or 9 in my mother's family. So we came from a pretty big family, and my parents got in college. And my father there was only 2 of them that actually went to college. But with 13 children, they were lucky to get 2, so they got 2 children to go to college, and they provided a pretty good life for all of us. And then don't forget the siblings, then they're all of us spread out. my last sibling, he's almost like a nephew. We were all out of the house when he came. So, he's very, very young and now having his own children. All right. So you want to start, of course, I'm going to be very quick, because we already know. You start from what you know from your family. One of the most important things is to interview your oldest members first and to record what they have to say. That was my mother talking that. I went out and bought a recorder and I recorded 2 people, and I'm so glad I recorded them, because you can't remember everything they're saying. And you don't know what's important to write down, especially when you first start. So I took my recording, and I love doing it. In fact, one of my relatives, she lived to be, she died one day before her 101st birthday. But at one time when we were talking, she said, okay, you can turn that off now, I got something done. So that was that, and then we went on it. She told me what she had to say, and then the recording went back on. It is a neat thing to do, to record, and especially get to hear the voice again. And but you can get so much more, and you can really pay attention to them instead of trying to write. That's hard to write when someone is talking to you. So the recording part, I still would highly suggest that. Because once in a while, just take a record, you go to a family reunion, just get that recorder out you can get a lot of information. When I first started, like I said, I knew my parents, my grandparents and my cousins and all that, so I had my family reunion list. But when I first started with genealogy, I said I could send out a letter to everybody requesting information, and I figured, I know how that's gonna go. And so, I would say, I'm gonna call everybody, so every weekend, I will call a different person. And, I wasn't sure how it would work, but it actually worked out so well. I think they were so shocked that I was calling, they only thought, well, someone probably just died. And so they were just so relieved that I just wanted information that they actually gave it to me, so that's why I kind of started. And so I got quite a bit of information from all the people that were still alive, and that was a good way to do it. And it was time consuming, but I have a pretty good family, so I knew it was gonna take a long time, so I just did it that way. And I thought I was gonna go very quicker, but everybody wanted to talk, so because I don't talk on the phone to them. And yeah, that was a nice way to get to know some of my relatives. Just give them a call, just go do that way. And then the records that you have, I think the records that have been the most helpful for me when I first started were marriage records. First of all, almost everyone has marriage records, even though a lot of times people say, well, there were no records for marriage, you are dead wrong. They sure were, it just depends on where you're going. They definitely were quite a few. That was one thing they wanted to know if you were married, they really did. So you have those records. Now, birth record and death record, that's different. They may not be quite as different, but for marriage records were pretty plentiful. And you know, the rest of the record, I'm sure you're already familiar with, but you just try to find where you think it's going to get somewhat quickly. And then once you can't get there quickly, then you have to sit down through this other documents as much as you may not want to do. The different types of records, again, I think, one of the overlooked records are court records. I love court records. You gotta have some patience to look through court records. I've been to the courthouse so many times, but I love those old lawsuits. They just tell you stuff you think I'm not gonna find anywhere else. There's a lot of the stuff that's just kind of mundane. Someone was born here, someone died here, someone there. If you get those court records, they can tell a little bit different story, and they are quite interesting. So if you have the patience, a lot of the court records, when I did on the bottom, those things haven't been opened up in 100 years, and they're up in those long swords, you pull them out, and you open the document, and it just folds right back up. They've been folded for so long, but when you look at those things, they are just incredible overall. And you just don't think who's who. But they are actually incredible. And plus you learn a lot about the other family, even if it's not your family, you learn about what was going on in that area. Of course, we all use census records. When I first started, the 1920 census, so most of them that was the one that we can look at. And then soon after that, in 1930, we're up to 1950. Cemeteries, I was so glad that I did a lot of that work when I first started, because in Bonaparte County, there a lot of the headstones were limestone. And some of those I can't even read anymore. So I'm glad I took pictures 25 years ago, and because some of them you can't read at all at this point, and which is very unfortunate. And of course, the land records, they're very interesting too, especially when you get to and mortgages and deeds and all that stuff, especially when you get to slavery. Because they have more information on the you make online. Some other sources, church records are tough. But if you can find them, York County has some excellent, I see them online, so that York County has a great detail. Church records are tough, because you have to see, you have to find someone who's willing to definitely go to the church record. A lot of churches are burned down or flooded, and so they lost their record. But if you can find church records, they are fantastic resource. Social Security, one thing I always like to mention Social Security, because a lot of people don't realize that your mom is maiden name or something. And when you're really stuck, and you just can't find a maiden name, if you are an ancestor or the brother and sister, they have a Social Security card. And a lot of people have them much earlier than people really think about. Then they're going to have the mother's maiden name on it. So that's what I really like about Social Security card, Social Security application. Unfortunately, they're very expensive, but they were always expensive. Then they went and they really went up maybe about 10 years ago, but they were expensive to begin with. But we don't need for the few that's fine, if you wanna look at a lot of it, it's going to be off. The military records is the one guy I had mentioned about, it's so full of information that you can find the pension records, especially for Black people, because they wanted to know every detail that you can prove that you were, and they wouldn't take another Black person, word, so you have to have somebody else. And then you can find the connections with them, and they do provide some of their documentation. And so military records is when you can find them, especially for, Civil War, pension. They provide just an invaluable amount of information. Tax records are interesting too, because sometimes people get this on the census, and so you can see them on the tax record, they're not really that help, and that's 2 years and more, but you know, they do have conclusions. I do like to go to the tax record, and of course, slaves were taxed too, so sometimes like in Robinson County, one some of the older records. The form wasn't meant for the names to be in there, but you can see they wrote down all the names of the slaves that person owned that were taxed, and I mean, that's just incredible stuff. And one of the things that I should have mentioned for all of these things, original records. Because when you get a transcript, you can miss so much. It's so much on an original record that you miss when you just do a transcript. It's nice to have stuff online and that kind of stuff, but you really do need to see it. If the original's online, then that's fine. But, when I first started, there wasn't anything much online, so I didn't have enough choice. But now you can still have a choice. I still would like to find the original record because they just have, you get this so much that you don't get. All right, this is our family in Bogota County. I tried to, tear down these sections so you might be able to read it. And this census page is pretty much my family. My, granddaddy's last name was Barnett from mine, but he married a Barnett. So we always assumed they were from this little town called Buchanan. It's spelled like Buchanan, but it's pronounced Buchanan, like they must have been. And so we just assumed that they were distant relatives. But now that we've done DNA tests, they weren't related at all. So now I have no idea. My grandfather was Barnett, but I have no clue as to where they came from. But over here you see at the top there, well, our family got the bomb. We see Clarence and Mary Lou, that's my family. And they had 12 children, 13 children, and then the generation before them had 12. So there was a lot of the Barnett, all those Barnett and Barnett family were our family. Right above them was one of granddaddy's sisters. And then above that, you see Coleman family, Harry and Bertha. And Bertha was my granddaddy's aunt. And she was a midwife and she delivered all those kids. And then the Barnett above them is the Barnett of my grandma's house. So when you first start doing research, you don't realize all that, but all those people living right there in the canyon together were all the same family. And you find that a lot, and of course, that it doesn't matter what type of team technology you do, you find that a lot. The people that are living here are often related. And then this is the same family that's going back, my grandparents' family, going back is another family. These are my grandparents. And the only picture I have of my grandparents when they were young, this is my that's when their oldest daughter was sitting there. Down to see there's my grandmother and my granddad right there. Granddaddy never said a word. You couldn't get too much out of granddad. He was so quiet. And my grandmother, she was always, and everybody was my grandmother because they had all the children. And so everyone in church knew her, and he was very active in the school board when they moved to Connecticut. And my grandparents, they lived in Connecticut most of my life. So I always thought they were from Connecticut. And then when the grandma died, I'm like, well, I'll be going to Connecticut. And I didn't know any of that stuff. And in fact, when we got there, you get the cemetery, it's beautiful, and we keep walking, and I'm like, I think black there and my grandparents back here. There's a black cemetery. So they were right together. And in fact, I think maybe last year they merged these two cemeteries, which is good. well, black people back then, but so there's nobody left here for the cemetery. So, it's very, good. But, the cemetery was better. But they were right together, they were the same. And so, that's when I first learned out that he was from, the family. The whole town came out, they all knew. That one, so. Right. Then you get to just some of the records that I've used. This is, I think it's not there because in Virginia has the best marriage certificates. I don't know how good they are in other places, but even back in 1853 when they first started when it started to have marriage certificates, they always asked a lot of information. They wanted to know how old you were. They wanted to know where you were born. They wanted to know your parents. And that's actually wonderful information. So I was able to actually very quickly go back go back to slavery very quickly. My mother had done a lot of research herself, so I decided to start on my father. And so I went down to Richmond, my father was in about 3 days. I came back and I had this big family, and my mother was like, wow, you did that in 1 weekend? Yeah. And so I thought I was doing something. I got back that quickly, and then I hit that brick wall, and it was very different to that. And the reason I had to up there because he had that was one family I couldn't find. I knew my grandparents, the names of their parents, but I didn't have the name of them. So in one I could never find, her name was many brothers. And the many brothers were an interesting family thing, father my family. They had worked, they were slaves, and 2 of them worked for 2 older women who never were married. And so when they died, they left them quite a bit of land. They left them 75 acres each. So they had 150 acres on the James River. The many brother family sued our family because they said, well, these people get that land. And it was the judge side of our family. So we had a lot of land that was on the river about our family. And the many brothers, although they were black, they served on juries for white people, which is very rare in the South. Most of the time, if you had a black person, then the jury was black. But the jury was very mixed. The many brothers served on juries for white jurors. So that was very different. Now, I think Carter was, first of all, they probably looked all white. That was the reality of it. Second of all, they looked very well. So they were a different family. So that's why that was there. This was just going up with the same tree. This is Alan Hampton Barnett and Louise Jackson. And again, it tells at the bottom, I know that it's hard to read, but it has their parents' names, which is just the best thing ever. Alan's parents were Hampton and yeah, Hampton and Caroline. And Austin Barnett. And it doesn't take very long. These people were almost all slaves. Alan wasn't a slave, but those parents were. It doesn't take that long to get back in slavery. It's just really a few generations. A lot of people think it was so far back. It just wasn't far back at all. Before we find out, oops, these people were all slaves. Same thing here. The next generation, Charles Barnett and Ossie Collins. Charles Barnett, the Barnett family is very well documented. When I first started, when I went to the courthouse, someone asked me if I was related to one of the Barnetts. I said, I didn't know, so I contacted her later. And when I got back home, and we talked for hours and hours, and we researched together for many, many years. But the Barnett family was very, very well documented before I started. Which was very, very nice. Hampton and Caroline Kyle were slaves in Bonaparte County, and they had 12 children. And Caroline Kyle, we were always told that she was related to the Kyle family that they served. And of course, now that we're all taking DNA tests, we was absolutely true. So when we find our family, my closest relatives, we didn't know any of them. And I'm not sure why we didn't. But the distant relatives, especially the people who stayed in that area, they knew so much about the family. So that family was I think well documented. There was only one that they didn't know what happened to, his name was Henry, and they thought that he ended up in Texas. And so we then found the button with DNA. That was one of the biggest finds I ever had. It's a huge method. We kept matching all these people in Texas, Oklahoma, California, and a few people had trees up, and some of them had Barnett in it. I'm like, who are these people? And I thought we couldn't get out. Where they go. And he was the one that ended up in Texas. And I went to a convention in Houston, and I really, because I wanted to meet somebody who is a descendant of Henry Barnett. And she told us that he actually escaped. That was what was happening, that he actually escaped, which actually makes more sense. So we didn't know how we got into Texas, we just knew that he ended up in Texas. All right, and then here's another one of my grandfather's side, the Evans family. Most of our family was from Barnett County, and my grandmother's family kind of hard to get out of Barnett County, but this is one of the first things my granddad's side. They actually were from Caswell County, North Carolina. And one was from Tazewell, Virginia, so Caswell and Tazewell, and where they were from. Now we're to the final. Slavery. Like I said, I got that shit so quickly, and I really thought I was doing something, and then they just felt like they could, you had a serious football. These are some of my mother's relatives in Alabama, and they were descendants of the slave owners, and his name was John Collins. And he had a very interesting story, and this story is when you find out the story, that you just like, this can't really be true, they're just so out there. And then the DNA results come back, and like, well, I guess they weren't really out there after all. It's amazing. I guess every story, it's rare that someone just really makes up a story. So you know, because they may get some of the details wrong, but that's what it is. John Collins, was from Virginia. He worked for one of the richest families in this country. It was called Taylor, Taylole. They had a dynasty of plantation. And my great-great-grandfather, John Collins, he worked for that family. And basically what he was in charge of bringing their slaves, it was towards the end of the right before the Civil War. Some people that were wealthy were moving their slaves further south, because the Union troops were, the Union troops were coming down to Virginia, so they like Alabama and Mississippi and stuff like that. And so John Collins was bringing the slaves from the Taylor family down to Alabama. And when John, he was interested in it. He didn't really associate with white society too much. According to our family history, he came from Virginia to Alabama with a free black woman. And they had 3 children. Her name was Nellie, and they had 3 children. And then after she got older, he took another wife. And that was my great-great-grandmother, and he was a slave. And then for his children to her, he's originally born. And here's all the census there at the top 3 listed. Well, when I first looked at that census, those people listed one. And I just went on by, because there was plenty of white columns. And this is Alabama. And then eventually I'm like, that's funny. Because there's the land, they got 100 acres each from their father, and then the older kids got 50 acres. So our family had 450 acres down in Hell County, Alabama. And that was them right there. And Richard, he married one of the Jeffries, and they have their story in Wilder and Austin. And you just would never believe it in the house. That's stuff movies that make that. And the lives of those people really live. And you can see right there, the next family there is one of the Taylors, that dynasty of slave owners family. And this was the next generation of Taylor. And so he was there. And then after that, when you see the census, you just see black family, black family, black family, black family, black. But you know that the census paper was at the census. Probably went to the main house and they told them, these are the people who are living there. So this was just, a few years after slavery was over, but most of those people didn't have the means to move anywhere else, so they were still there. And so, if you want to do, in fact, the research that I've done in the Taylor family, they must have 1,000 miles of them. real, at the longer, not longer than, beginning store. So we want to really do some research. The interesting thing about the Taylor family, they had so many slaves that they kept the family units together and they had this document. So, if you go back to Virginia where they were from, and you go to Alabama, it's the same name, because they were the same family, so. It's a very interesting contribution. You hear a lot of times, but it's well. The family that was living with the Taylors, S.A. Marshall, Ida, and Mariah. Well, Peter Collins married Ida. So if I want records on Ida, I'm gonna have to do all of it. Right. So he married, you see, she was with they were domestic servant. And they probably have become a wife also. And then you see the farmhands have the rest of the people, so they probably lived in the house with the Taylor. And then the next family, it was a William Randolph, and then that's H. Harrington, and that's also my family. But it's Harrington. So, when you, of course, I'm sure that most of you have seen stuff like this all the time. The census person, taken the census, he wrote down what he heard Harrington, but it's Harrington. And, so that's our family right there. So, again, the family units are often very close to each other, but I would have never suspected when I looked at that was the plantation. And when you go back later, you think, of course it was. But what happened is you look at the land plots down in Alabama, you just see these huge plots, everybody, 1,000 acres. I mean, it's just huge plots, but where were the black people living on those plantations? Well, they still were living there. Many people live there well after the Civil War. I mean, even into the 1900s, they still were living on this plantation. On the next page, you have Georgetown, as that was the other brothers. So there he is, the same $1,400 and $254. So for black people, they were quite well living. And then the next one, Adam Page, was also American, was I never knew someone said, oh, Adam Page was one of the Fanny's kids. I would have never known. And then Fanny, according to what our family history was, her maiden name is Smith. And so all of these people, if you were looking at this, you might think, well, that's George Collins versus his wife, must have been the slave owner, and then all these black people are his former slaves. But no, George Collins really was black. He just, his color was white, but his race was black. And those are all his things. So they were all those people, they were living all in common. And I never would have known that without other people telling me that. So this is one of the things that you look at. If you look at later censuses, the colonies is black. But on that census, they were all black. Longer now, you can't see the picture, but if you touch something from where the key is. Longer now is in the canon in Montauk County, and it is still there. In fact, in my father's family, my grandmother's side, I didn't know I was related to them, and for a long time. It's an interesting story of how that went on in the family. Now, I have something that you can look at a little bit better. You can just see my personal notes there. I do that all the time. This is a slave. This is the second story of Edward Johnson, who had died. He was a circuit judge. He was in West Virginia. He had a massive heart attack. And this was his inventory. So you just see all the furniture, and then you see slaves, and then you see the animals. And so it was just basically put everything back, and then it was unknown to talking. And those were all the slaves that up there. And you see those brackets on the right. You see those little brackets. They were listed in family groups. And so at that point, I didn't know who these were. I do that all the time. I would love to do that. So I see a slave list, especially this close to the end of the Civil War. And this is 1855, or somewhere around. And then I try to see if I can find those families on the census. And so first of all, I always look for unusual names. And that was one of the unusual names right there was Fleming. I wonder if I can find something called Fleming on the census, and I did. And on the back of that, I have all my notes and stuff that I had. Turns out many years later, that's my family. I did not realize. But, that's one of those things, I love to do that, especially if you have family that's lived in the same area for a long time. You know you're related to a lot of people you just are, so you might as well just do the research. And other people can benefit from the research too. So, your family is, super big, and this is actually where to see. Actually, let's look at this one. This is the same, but I did a presentation for my family, we get together once a month. And I gave you a presentation, this is that same document, I just typed it out so they could see it, because I remember. And Susan, that is now. Susan, and she married William Bird, and that's their child. And so I went down and over the years, there's probably 57, 8, and then, you know, you just keep coming back, and this is what I think this is our family up. Right there. Because, Susan Fisher had a brother named Isaac, and Isaac, he got married, but they don't have any children, so they were always associated with the family. I don't know who these other people are. This odd name, Fondue, Fondue, or whatever you want to see, it spelled different ways, he was on the same level. And I think that is a mother right there. And so, I just have to prove it all, but, it's very interesting how the family really were. Agnes at the top, he married somebody at a neighboring plantation, which is like, he were down. It was right next to Florida and about County. And that family is very well documented because they were owned by, John Allen for 3 or 4 generations. So they had it all documented in family models and stuff like that. And, there is another in, in Montauk, in the Montauk County document. It was after the Civil War, and someone had written another doc, and they were telling how they found out that Agnes had died. Therefore, she was a nurse for all of it. So she was a nurse for, this family here, this is Martha. Right here, that's why the secret system. And there is Mr. Pleasant. Very last thing is Richardson. Now, Mr. Richardson lived on a neighboring land. And that's another thing about slavery. A lot of times the man was not living at that same time. And President Richardson, he escaped from all of them. And he walked with nothing public. And then he came back and everybody and he was like celebrated as a hero. And he was there was 4 black men. So, and they may have all escaped, I'm not sure about that. But one of my relatives was doing research and President, I guess he got a medal from West Virginia. And West Virginia was trying to get rid of these, like some of the medals. And so President Richardson had no living descendants. One of our Barnett just sent in the information and they sent us, so we have this civil war. And the family donated it to the museum in Bentown. So if you go down to the museum in Bentown, you see the medal on the wall. So anyway, this is how we get into slave records. I love that topic. This is very interesting. And that's really the only way to figure out the family if they were slaves. And of course, not everybody was. There's plenty of, Botetourt County had a lot of free guys. There's one lot of that. I mean, they have quite a large population of free guys. But if you really want to find out your family, you have to, there is so much about the family that might have, and you just, they may or may not have, suspect that they did, so you have to do all that. He said, you need to know where all their family went, they take some of the slaves with them when they moved, and that's how many of the slaves ended up in Missouri or Kentucky or whatever. The family, that somebody got a wedding brother, and they sent the slaves down there. And that's how, so when you get the DNA matching of people in August, I'm like, who is that? Well, you got to kind of figure out that. So the amount of research we have to do is like 40 times as much as normal for research, but you got not only know your family, but any other family fact, my older family, you need to know every person to see who got some of those things. And it's not always listed in this order, or something like that. Something you've got to kind of figure out. This is the Tennessee. Oh, at the top, Mr. Jameson. Some of the kids later on after the Civil War, they visited their mother and James, the last name listed up there was also. Like I said, I think that was all our family, because one of those things you gotta tie together and hopefully decide to get some DNA matches. So I've been looking for the Jameson family for a while to see whether the DNA matches might come through. See if I can see my area. That's just some of my chicken scratch. These were the four men that are black and had served in the United States Public in Montauk County. And of course, I want to see their records, but like everybody else, it costs money, so I just have it sitting there. One of these days, I'll actually, well, some of that stuff is starting to go online. It's a slow process because it's a lot of records. And we're starting to go online. I have seen, the records for permanent records, and one of my relatives had already. But I would like to see the lives of those other people, because they have to get so much information to document their lives before the government says, oh, we're going to do it. And what they tell on their articles, they want to know if you were formerly a slave. They want to know who your master was. And they want so much to, and so then you have all the documentation for the people who have to speak for you. And so that's interesting. So eventually, Thomas Reynolds up there, he married someone named Martha Barnett, but I don't know who she was. I don't know if she was or not. So I won't see that. I want to see all of them. Eventually, I will get around to looking at all of them, because again, the document, it's like a lawsuit. The documentation we get there is incredible. This is from a lawsuit. One of the times I was down in Rockport, I saw a lawsuit from Emma Barnett and someone else. And I thought, that's not one of our things. But William Barnett did marry Emma, so I don't know, let me look that up. And wow, that I did that on that. Emma, her mother was named Lucy, and that's all we knew about her. Lucy was a slave, and her husband was a slave, but they lived in Rockford County. And they lived in Rockford and Montauk County. But the Union troops that come through, Rockford County and freed all the black people. So all the black people were free they were free maybe a year before they. And so anyway, Lucy's husband, when he actually, he served the South, which is, towards the end of the Civil War, the South was getting desperate and the North was getting desperate. So what happened was the South, they started to, they call it conscription. They made, free black and sometimes slaves work for the Confederacy. Now they didn't give them guns, they weren't voting. And the records of Virginia actually survived. I've never heard of it anywhere else in Savannah. These are Virginia records here. They actually survived, and so you can tell, you get so much information about it. So these were people who were made to work for the South, whether they were free or black, free or a slave. And so those are the records there, and those are excellent records. So anyway, I think it's by her husband's name, it just says never returned from war, so that's all we did is not there. But this deposition that Emma gave, is actually another one. This is how many brothers and sisters, one sister and 4 brothers, and they gave the name. Now I didn't know any of them before now I thought it was and it tells a little bit about that. Down here, but this is the part I want you to see, the brother and sister, and then Warwick, John, and Mary. I could know any of them. So look at this statement. I was looking one day. All right, there's Lucy, about 23, and her 4 children, Edward, Ben, Mary, and York. So that we could, but the first, involved, they had, plantation involved, and then down here, and I don't know, woman and Peter blind boy, Peter was brother. And it took that long to figure that out, I looked at the census once, and, the 1880 census actually has one of the columns that, you know, on the invalid or blind or whatever, and going up in the county. So, that took me a long time to figure that. So that was all, so that discovery was made because I looked at a lawsuit. And then they gave me some names, and I went back and found. And this was again another document I had, not that I needed to put in my family, but I just had it because I'm not sure that's what it is. But I do the research on it. Here is Lucy, headstone. That headstone was very for many years in Black Cemetery. And you can see it's a hallmark of not the Black Cemetery. You see there's not a whole lot of headstones in that part of the cemetery. They got problem with cemetery started and then it went. Well, one day I said, I'm a dig man. And I'm tired of seeing that stone down there. And I picked that up and my grandfather raised that stone. And that's not limestone, but that one is very well. And the red ants down in the south don't play. They might be digging on that. At first we did that up, but I was always so glad I found that, and so I had it popped up so I can take a picture of. Like I said, I was just tired of saying that thing, it was just buried down, I got to know it was there, and so I was glad and that's after see that you saw on the study. Again, going back to the original records. Transcription, this don't do records like this any justice. This is a marriage certificate from Margaret Barnett. She was one of the 12 children of Hampton and Caroline Barnett. Married in 1866 at the home of James Rowland, and he thinks James Rowland actually, I know that my great-great-great-grandmother died at his house in 1890. They got married at James Rowland's house. They said James Rowland offered the 50 because both of them owned the house at one time. They give the names of the people married, their ages, condition of husband, formerly a slave of M.W. Kennedy. He had a wife who left him in 1861. That's a lot of information. And then the wife's condition said single, formerly a slave of Williamsburg. And it tells where they were born, where they lived. Then it's a parent, and the husband parent, Peter Charlotte Langhorne, who was the wife's parent, Camp Barnett and Caroline, his wife, who was there. And you got some good information. And now, if you would have looked at someone's transcription, it would have just it's not like you would have missed all of that. So, like I said, those original records, we always want to look at as much as you can. Here is another one of Hampton and Caroline. Children who was born out. I was looking through another lawsuit, and I found this patent for it. Paul and Tiffany, are pretty cute. And it's funny, some of his descendants came to one of our units. They had a huge picture, and one of those big old pictures. They carried that and said, "This is our relative." I saw and Dr. Lewis brought that. I'm like, what? Because I had seen in the courthouse this thing called Dr. Lewis Barnett. He was a slave. But I guess he learned enough. He wasn't sure to get to school, but he learned enough, and apparently they called him doctor. And then they kind of shut down in his family. I would have never known that, but like I said, so I did him a copy of it. I feel like I helped. And this one has a patent that they were using this year. All right, yeah, that's well, actually, DNA testing. I was one of those people. I was just so skeptical about taking a DNA test because I just figured, your DNA getting in the wrong hands. There's too many things out there, and I know you want to do this, and then finally I'll give it. And I said, well, I want to know it so badly. I'm going to die. So I applied to get it. I am so glad I did it. I love it. I probably wasted too much time on it. Because before DNA testing, I used to contact people and I did all that research. And then you get to DNA and it's all the time to find something. So you kind of need to start on that. Where are my estimates up there? They keep coming back, you know, the ancestry and all of the companies, as they get more and more down there, they kind of finish. But most of my, DNA is from Africa and very little from Europe, but it's, and they keep thinking back and forth, but it's no real surprise that, most are from the slave, the countries that long to say, things are on like West Coast of Africa. And then some of the Ireland and the England and I was but they weren't a whole lot of stuff. In mind, of course, there's always something you can figure out. But I know you do it, I really love it. And when you look at, and I don't know how it might fare in terms of other people. Most of my relatives are kind of like me, and as they get further and further and further away, they look like they're just completely different. But all of a sudden, you get a lot of white people. So you're like, well, who are these people? Now I'm assuming that when someone of European ethnic that's American, and they're taking DNA test, they must think the same thing. Their relatives look like them, and then all of a sudden, we start to show up. So it's interesting. It has to be interesting. So I've never been in those discussions of people who take a DNA test. Thinking, who are these people? And somehow they're not that distant. And so you find, well, what was really happening? And then during slavery, I think it was kind of a badge of honor for the slave owner to have some children, some of those, white women. And so you have a lot of light-skinned people coming out of slavery, coming down. And so there's a lot of stories, like we hear the story of Thomas Jefferson, we think that way. So you need to actually, one, you need to get all your that. But there's so many of us stories that are all around. It happened all. And now how many of you have taken a DNA? Yeah, so you already know. It's just so interesting. When you first look at it, I know when I first looked at it, like, who are you? I knew something because I had done research and probably, I would say 15, 20 years before I took the DNA test. And even then, I said it to a lot of people, but little by little, it starts to make sense. And I think it's very rewarding if you haven't done it. I didn't use the autosomal test. I did do the Y test. I figured it wouldn't really be that helpful, but that's my granddad's family that I know so little about. And so the test, the results come in, and so eventually I figured one day something's going to make sense. So that's why I took the Y test anyway, you know, to go that much thing why. From looking after your father, something is going to make sense one day, and that's why I took it. I didn't think I was right. And I didn't, but I figured that someday somebody's going to take a test and they know that plan, and then you'll realize that makes a lot of sense. This chart I keep about that, I brought next to my desk every day. I love it because this is your quick reference. If you check, if somebody tests and you're something more than that, you can see how you might be related and how related my grandparents, great grandparents, whatever. So I just keep that there. I love to look at that. Because not all DNA tests can companies have it broken down. Well, some do better than others. And so it's just a quick reference. I got that off the series of the morning topic. So I keep that in my hands and stuff all the time. Now, does anyone out there know of the Collins needs method? Okay, it's based on triangulation. Like Fred says, well, I'm related to you, and I'm related to you. Does that mean both of you are related to each other? If you are, then it's a triangle. I'm related to you, I'm related to you, and you're related to each other, then it's a triangle. And somebody realized a long time ago, if you have a triangulated match, then you're probably descended from a common ancestor that's not that far back. So what Collins needs test does is that they just put it on steroids and they look at all these triangulated matches and they come and you can take some of the parameters and the results are just fascinating. When we first started out, I had a broken down in the top of 60 to 400, centimeter, and this is my father's, DNA. And, so that's why I'm not on there, because I'm actually at like 3,500 centimeter. So, you change the parameters to get up. I'm looking at like kind of second cousin around this one. And, what I know about it. That's, and some of the stuff you can get from just looking at it, but I think it's most helpful when you start to get your statistics out. So to see how it moves, I think it's just amazing. These right here, I knew these were like that. I know almost everybody in that group. And then you see this called a cluster. Then the next cluster, these 4 people, and they match by a certain amount, and this one is called a 2/3 inclusion. That means you have to match at least 2/3 of the people that you can match by. You only get 2/3, half of 2/3. And I was on the same test, so I can compare something else. So it's 2/3 inclusion, but everybody in this block after that 2/3. Otherwise, you get picked out, put in another. Well, this cluster here, these 4 people, they all match each other. You can see they all, every one of them match. But they also match a lot of people. And that's called a super cluster. If you see the super cluster, there's a super cluster. So what it's saying is those people, those 4 groups of people probably are all connected by the same aspect, even though they get things like it all. These are another thing, there's the many brothers that we talk about, because some of the descendants of the many brothers there. And so actually at least 3 or 4 Barnett, then we want to 30 married. So that's those people. You have some more Barnett, but it didn't match, they didn't, make the 2/3 inclusion rate. So we see they match the people up there too. And then there, I know, this is not a lot of it. This is actually irrelevant on both sides. So that's what that theory is. These people in this cluster are probably all related by a common ancestor. There's not really that far back. And I already know that too for those people, but it's more interesting when you get further out. And you all of a sudden, you like, who are these people? And you see the relationship, and that's not good. That's when you need to just bring about report the job. I can look at these all day. I know some people don't like them, but they're going to do that by engineering background. I absolutely love it. And what they can tell, because you just don't get this when you're looking at the DNA test. You get some of it for your closer relatives. When you get those further relatives, you just kind of know through, and it just keeps the stuff, keep them together. It is a third party. Yeah, that. I think that's what it is. And, but anyway, you can look it up, and then you have it, put in the video of people how they do it. And I know ancestors, they wouldn't allow you to get the data for a while. I think it was heating up their servers really, because some of the stuff is intensive. It slows down their service, because it takes a long. I mean, if you turn it on the test, you may come back 4 or 5, 10 hours later and you're going to do this dead or because you're going through all of those matches. And so, I guess ancestors want to real happy with that. So they stopped it. But when I was getting ready for this, I said, I don't know what ancestors do. Well, I found out that, and I have more matches on ancestors than anything else that I found. But now I'm figuring out like, yeah, so, this is fantastic. And then the next group is another cluster. You see there's another super cluster. So it's telling you the same thing. These people are probably all related by a common ancestor. I know that's one of the brackets I'm going to do that with. I know these are some of my past people right here. And so I know most of these people. So a lot of this, I don't really use that, but it's when you get further out. I just couldn't print out the big one. I mean, some of that I picked two products. And of course you can scroll on the computer so you can see it. But when you see, I can't wait there. I have time to really look at some of those factors. I want to figure out, because some people, I just don't know. Because, the names that you have may not match. You're looking for someone whose last name is Jackson, but there's maybe not a taking that off the name. You just can't find those people. But eventually, just to show you that it's, you can figure out some of those things and where they come from. And I love this method. Like I said, I could spend all day, just trying to figure out, you can tell the information, it's, don't really see, if you will, to take it on. And it is a little bit hard, it's a little bit complicated sometimes, but it is like, once it starts to run, I'm like, good, I'm just go to bed and maybe it's kind of, and I get up, so depending on the data, sometimes it's very quick, and sometimes it just takes a long time. So that's the common thing, I hope some of you will look at it, so you have the patients, and you have, kids and grandkids who might be able to figure out for you, you just look at the results, that's them run the program, it's absolutely amazing. I hope that I'll hear back from some of you that I tried that efficacy. That you have proposed, and what happens is, like I said, it just groups people together and you just go imagine. And then you think, wow, all these people are related, how are they? I said, oh, what is my plan is for some of these people, like you don't know who they are, especially when you get a group of, know about them. You're like, well, how are they related to each other? And then you can figure out how they relate to each other. That's what I want to do. Like, if you can tell I'm excited about that college meeting, it's really fantastic. I think that's pretty much what I had. And that's great to the people who get that slide there. Because it's one of those, it's not a PowerPoint for them. So anyway, any questions that anyone has? Isn't it fun? It's an interesting topic. It's a hard topic. You just have to put the emotions aside and just go for it. Like I said, many, not all African Americans were slaves, and so you can look at a lot of the same type of records, but it's still that they're a little bit suppressed. But still, you can find a lot. And so when you're lucky enough to have relatives that are free, and of course, then you have some who intermarry with other people, and there's also it's the phenomenon called passing. Yeah, we've known that in the Black community for a long time. It's when you look wide enough to pass the white. And that's been true from back in slavery. So that's how some people escaped. They got on the train and no one suspected and they were gone. But the only way to pass, you gotta have to kind of deny your own family, because then people might make that association. Oh, this is the fact. So oftentimes they moved away and they didn't really stay in contact anymore with the family. So that's one of another challenge, when someone looks wide enough and then decide, okay, I'm going to live as a wife. But once in a while, you get pulled and they have a child, and like, oops. DNA is so funny, right? And sometimes those things are still there. So that's another challenge.
I was gonna ask, from your Virginia records, it looked like you used a lot of inventory, state inventories and so forth. And I'm assuming Botetourt County was not burned, or most of their records that survived.
Right, and in fact, the courthouse did have fire, but most of their records still survived. Yes, they did experience the fire.
In Alabama, were you able to have similar records to that or not?
Oh, not as many in Alabama, and they just didn't record it for whatever reason. Right? And when you see their inventory, they just lack everything. But so when you do see that, but losses, I'm not sure that I've seen as many losses in Alabama. Then it was just heavy and losses.
What about before the Civil War, state records, that sort of thing?
The state records, again, they're just not really good, they do have them. Yeah, that's what it is. Any other one? You find out where to find it. No, and that's an interesting. There's a lot of interest, but I could spend all day on it. I know one day when I was in the library of Virginia, and I had to sign in because I wanted to look at some original records. And the guy behind me, he said, why not? He said, did you know there's free black in Albemarle County? And he was working on a project to document the free black in Albemarle County. I said, yeah, I'm looking at that. We're not doing it. Well, yeah, that's we are related. So, you just don't know, because sometimes, you might have a free black married slave. If slave and a woman, then if the woman is a slave, then no children are there. But if it's the other way around, then that's free. So you get all this mixture of free black and And slaves, and so we just never really know, and I never thought of slaves today, but we match a lot of them, and they're very distant, but we still match them. I'm like, what's that Barnett name? Means a little bit more, and the names are always like the hardest thing to do. Sometimes you just luck out, and he's like, well, they could take the slave, things like that. But, in fact, the Barnett, that were in, Albemarle, the movie scene in Ohio, and a lot of them, it was called Barnett's Bridge. And that's where I'm talking about it. And we matched them. And that name, I don't know about that.
What was the YDNA? Where did that go back to?
It went back to that.
Oh, your YDNA is
Yeah, which I suspect. This is my grandfather's father, when he, registered for the Bad Actor Eyes, and the blue eye figure is the same, like, it's a real long. We can be green eyes. But blue eyes, it's what comes out of it. And then William Barnett, his father, it's fairly quiet.
You remember the happy place guitar or?
I don't actually,
It seemed like Irish was the one that had the most.
I think that's all.
How about the Carter family? How far back were you able to trace them?
The Collins?
Carter.
Father.
If it was on your mother's side.
Oh, those were Collins.
Oh,
And then the Collins family is very, very, very well back. It was documented a long time ago. So it's nice to know that story was actually correct. Yeah. We matched quite a few Collins, and they were a huge family, and we were a huge family in December. Any other questions? Well, thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me. I hope you learned something, and it's a fascinating topic. I have half in my library over there. Well, I have read quite a few of those books, a lot of them, of course, I just keep it. But, there's some interesting topics over there. I have some DNA books over there too. That I read, most of the, I know the one I have out there. But a lot of my records are, books are unique to the written and out. Take a look and browse, and thanks for coming.